In this video, I'm going to show you how to take vocals from this.
Baby, you gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pain.
To this.
Baby, you gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pain, but the plug ain't gonna wait. Before I go home, might be late.
If you want to learn how I did that, stay tuned.
Don't worry, you ain't gonna leave me empty-handed. I'ma get you off no hands. The management of your thighs round my neck, dirty tech, shoddy wet. I'ma take it to the next. When you shaking in the bed, when we riding in the coupe.
Yo, what's up guys? J Cruz here from Mad Res Studios, and today I wanted to share some tips and tricks I use every single day when mixing vocals to a pre-mixed instrumental. I want to show you that it's not that difficult to get a really clean, professional sounding mix using some really easy fundamentals that if you just understand why I'm applying these tips, you'll be able to apply them to any record, any song, on any DAW with any plugins. The really important thing is understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm actually approaching cleaning up this vocal and getting it to sound as best as possible. So I went ahead and muted all of the plugins so you can hear the raw recordings, how we got them, and basically start from scratch. Let's get in. As you can see, I got the beat up here, the lovely pre-mixed instrumental. I went ahead and brought the volume down. You can see mine is 8.5 just to give me a little bit of headroom starting out. I don't want to be having my vocals compete against a fully mastered beat right off the bat, so I usually start by bringing that down a little bit. The way I like to mix is I bus my lead vocal, these two here going out through my main track here, Honey. This artist is named Honey Boy, so Honey track is his lead vocal track. The rest of these here are all coming out through the dubs track, which is this bus here. And then my ad-lib tracks are actually coming out through the lead vocal Honey track as well. Alright, so you may have noticed I didn't mute every single plugin. I left a few plugins here on the actual individual tracks. I generally apply all of my processing to the actual bus tracks, but there's usually a few plugins I'll pop on the actual audio tracks themselves. First and foremost, auto-tune. If my artist wants that really auto-tune sound or even just more of a natural tuning sound, a lot of time I'll put that on very first so that they can record through the auto-tune and make sure they nail their performance, hitting the notes that they want to hit. So you can see I have my auto-tune setting here, relatively fast at a 10 speed with 0 humanize, at B major is the key of the song. So for this particular song that worked well. Moving right into a little bit of EQ. All I'm doing is shaving off the bottom end here, just wanting to control any of that low end rumble and knock off any unwanted sounds that may have came from the mic. I rolled all the way up to 120 on this particular track, but a lot of times that's only up to maybe 80 or 100. This particular song, though, I didn't feel like I needed a lot of that low end from this vocal, so. All my tracks here basically have that exact same thing. We got the auto-tune going right into the EQ, except for on these two dub tracks. On these two dub tracks, I like to add a stereoizer effect, I call it. It's basically just kind of spreading that vocal out and making it more of a stereo image instead of just right up the center, so that when those doubles come in, they really catch your attention and they hit you on the left and right side of the ears. So let me show you what that's doing here.
To the next, when you shaking in the bed, when we riding in the coupe, shawty grabbing at the stick.
This is a really simple effect. It's actually called the Haas effect, H-A-A-S effect. Basically all you're doing is you're delaying the left and right signal just slightly from each other. So you can see here my left signal isn't being delayed at all. The right signal is being delayed only 18 milliseconds, which gives that little delay and makes it now sound like this particular track is in stereo.
To the next, when you shaking in the bed, when we riding in the coupe, shawty grabbing at the stick.
Right? And that adds like a really cool effect, especially when you hear that with the lead vocal.
Round my neck, dirty text, shawty wet. I'ma take it to the next, when you shaking in the bed.
So it really just makes sure when that double comes in that it spreads it out a little bit and gives it a little bit more interesting flavor. But from there, that's pretty much all I'm doing on the actual audio tracks themselves. When we get to the ad-libs here, I'll kind of explain what I got going on down here, but for the most part, that's all I'm going to apply to the actual audio tracks themselves. So now let's get into the main vocal chain. Every single vocal that I approach, I usually hit with 3 main steps. Okay, so the first step is going to be cleanup. This is where we're removing any unwanted frequencies and really just trying to get our vocal to a nice, even, flat response where we can have a good starting point to mix this thing. Step 2 is going to be adding character and adding tone to the vocals. This is where we're going to take that vocal and really just bring it up to the front of the track and really feel the energy of that lead vocal. The last step I like to call adding the swag, or adding any effects, right? So this is where we're adding space and depth to the vocals. So this is like reverbs, delays, any sort of modulation, cool effects that really just add some ear candy. This is going to be step 3. Alright, so now that you understand those 3 steps, let's apply them to this vocal here. A lot of time in this cleanup phase, I'll go ahead and mute the beat out so I can really just focus on the vocal and really hear anything that I'm not wanting to hear or any unwanted frequencies. So, to start out our cleanup process, I started out with a little bit of de-esser. This is just to tame any unwanted sibilance right around this 4K range. You can hear around this portion.
Crazy, ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but
So you can see just on this line right here,
I got some stops I gotta make.
it's just really bringing down those sibilants and any unwanted harsh frequencies. Moving right along to the virtual mix rack. The virtual mix rack is by Slate Digital. I love these plugins. You basically pay $15 a month and you get all of their plugins, and it's an amazing deal in my opinion. I use them on every single mix. So for this particular vocal, I started out with the virtual channel here. All I'm doing is kind of driving that console emulation a little bit, giving me a little bit more grit and a little bit more life. I'll let you hear the before and after here.
I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pains. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the...
Just really kind of brings the vocal up a little bit and just gives it a little bit of something that I like. Next up, we have a little bit of our corrective EQ. So basically all I'm doing here, I'm adding a little bit of top end right around this 8K range, 7.6 kilohertz. Cutting a little bit here at around 2K. I just felt like there was a little bit of harshness. I'll let you kind of hear that.
I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pains. I got some stops I gotta make.
Not really harsh as much as it is kind of like honky or kind of just like right up in your face, nasally sounding. Moving right along here, we went to the 700 hertz range. This is that real honky or really kind of just like muffled sound. So cutting a lot right here. And also cutting around 300 hertz, which is really the muddy kind of, again, just unwanted low end that I'm not really interested in. So I'll let you hear before and after this EQ.
I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pains. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pains. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the pains.
So for me, it really just kind of flattens that out and really just kind of evens everything out a little bit. It's not poking out in any unwanted weird way for me. It's much more even and just a lot more balanced. So moving right along to our first stage of compression. Now in this stage of compression, I'm really looking to just tame and control those dynamics. So you can see in certain parts of this verse here, we have some peaks that kind of poke up. And I'm really just looking to barely kiss those and kind of bring them down just a touch.
Take it to the next when you shaking in the bed. When we riding in the coupe, shawty grabbing at the stick. Wanna drive, wanna lick.
So you can see I'm really not even touching this compressor that much, barely hitting it with a 1.7 ratio. It's very much just controlling those dynamics a little bit, but it does add a little bit of tone as well, you can hear.
I'ma get you off no hands. The management of your thighs round my neck. Dirty tech, shawty wet. But the plug ain't gonna wake. Before I go home, might be late. Don't worry, you ain't gonna leave me.
So I'm getting a little bit of gain here. For the most part though, this is just kind of controlling those dynamics. Next step is going to be moving into our multi-band compressor. This guy here is great, the C4, for just really making sure that any like low-end buildup that may happen on certain parts of the verse or any high-end frequencies that come on just certain parts, making sure those are controlled and tamed at all times. So.
But the plug ain't gonna wake. Before I go home, might be late. Don't worry, you ain't gonna leave me empty-handed.
You can see I'm really just kind of knocking out this low end below 177. If it builds up too heavy, my threshold is set right around here so that it just knocks it down. My threshold is set so that it just knocks it down, just controlling that low end a little bit. Also around this harsh kind of frequency here between 1.3 and 8K.
But the plug ain't gonna wake. Before I go home, might be late.
I'm also boosting these frequencies here on the top end just to give me a little more high end, but also tame them down in case they get out of hand.
But the plug ain't gonna wake.
So now that I got stuff controlled and I'm really taming that low end that I didn't want to hear initially, let's move into the next step. This is a good time to bring the beat back in.
But the plug ain't gonna wake. Before I go home, might be late. Don't worry, you ain't gonna leave me empty-handed. I'ma get you off no hand.
Alright, so we're getting there. I'm definitely feeling a lot more clean, a lot more control coming from this vocal. Let's do a quick before and after just so you can hear.
Let me put a shirt and a tie around my neck so you give me them band. Drop it in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops again.
So it's not drastic, it's not huge, but really, I was just cleaning up all the unwanted stuff. So now we're getting into phase 2, where we really start to add that character and that rich tone that we want to hear. At this point, I'll usually add a second stage of compression. This compressor we're not going to use so much for controlling the dynamics, but we're really trying to bring out that tone and that character that I want to bring out of that lead vocal. So for this record, I use the 1176 to bring out that tone and really bring that vocal up to the front of the mix here. Let's see what that's doing.
Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck so you give me them bands. Jumping in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint.
So this compressor is great for really just smashing that vocal up front and really giving me that presence that I was looking for. I'm really not trying to hit this thing crazy hard, but at the same time, I'm really just driving that knob until I hear that sound that I want out of the vocal. So you can hear how I'm kind of playing with this.
Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck so you give me them bands. Jumping in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but
so yeah, for me, right around that 5-6 dB range on average is a good area of reduction, and really it was just giving me that sound that I was looking for. So now that I got my vocal up to that level, I started to notice that maybe there's not quite enough high end, right? Maybe I want to add back some of those frequencies that I actually did like. So the next thing I added was CLA vocals. Now this plugin I've seen used by many professional engineers. A lot of them just claim it gives them that sound that they put on all of their vocals, and they don't know what it is. They're just like, hey, it's that nice little touch. And I used to think this is like a cheating plugin, right? Because it's so easy. There's just all this stuff built in for you, and how is it going to sound bad? But honestly, why would you not use a plugin that's that simple and easy to use? So all I'm doing here is really just kind of cutting some of the subs. I'm bringing up a little bit of this top frequency, he calls it, and adding a little bit of this push compression, right? So that's just giving me a little bit more oomph, a little bit more presence. I also really like the effects that are built into this thing. So the reverbs sound really nice, these delays sound really nice, but all I used on this lead vocal was just a little bit of this quarter note delay. So I'll let you hear what this is doing.
Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck so you give me them bands. Jumping in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. You
can hear that delay there at the end. Just really subtle, just adding a little bit of space and a little bit more, just a little bit of ear candy for you, right? Alright, so at this point, I'm liking the way that it's sounding. I probably would have added in my reverb. Usually I like to add that in pretty early on just so I can get a vibe of how this song is really just coming together and the overall space of that vocal.
Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck so you give me them bands. Jumping in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint.
Right, so just a little bit of reverb, add a little bit more space. I'll get into all the effects that I use here at the end, but for now, I'm liking the way that this is sounding. Now in this particular song, and with Honey Boy's voice, I wanted to add a little bit of modulation, just like a little bit of extra sparkle or a little pizzazz, and I actually picked this trick up from Young Thug's engineer, Alex Tomei. He likes to add sometimes a little bit of this flanger and this ensemble back to back. It's just really subtle amounts here, but you can see if I were to turn these up.
Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck so you give me them bands. Jumping in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but the plug ain't gonna wait. Before I go home, might be late. Don't worry.
Right? So they're really cool, kind of phasey, kind of just trippy space sounding like effects, but for me, I really like to add those in just subtly. Sometimes I'll add a little bit more on the chorus or maybe on a certain emphasis word, but for the most part, on this lead vocal, I thought I added just a little bit of extra spice that I wanted. So the very last thing in my vocal chain here, now that I've got all this high end added back in, I've got my presence from my compressor, I've got this a little bit of extra spice from our ensemble and our flanger. Now I want to make sure I'm controlling all that extra sibilance that might be coming through with a little last minute de-esser. Right? Now this guy is really kind of just shaving off any of that last bit of harshness that's poking through.
Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck so you give me them bands. Jumping in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no.
Now it looks like it's really going to town here and carving in pretty deep, but honestly, you can't really hear the effects that it's doing. It's mainly just controlling that harshness, just like what I wanted to do. So again, we're hitting it right around that 4K range. This seemed to be a problem frequency for this particular vocal.
Baby, I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints.
Alright, so the very last thing I would have added on this particular vocal is a little bit of parallel compression. I usually like to do this at the very end just to keep that vocal consistent and make sure it's present throughout the whole verse and you can hear every single word. So I add that here. So we'll go ahead and throw this parallel compression in. We'll show you a before and after there.
Baby, I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but the plug ain't gonna wait. Before I go home, might be late.
Right? It's not a huge difference, but it definitely is bringing in more presence and just subtle little increments, bringing that vocal more and more close up to the front, more present, more legible, and honestly, that's the sound that I'm looking for right there. Last little thing I did for a little bit more space and just a little cool effect I like to throw on my lead vocals is this widener. It's kind of just a spreader effect. It's different than the CLA vocals. There's this spreader, wider stereo effect here, but I like to use my own on my lead vocal just to give this unique sound that I've grown accustomed to. So let me show you that.
So you give me them bands, drop it in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no mommy stand. Let me put a shirt and tie around my neck. So you give me them bands.
Right, so it just adds that stereo image. It just kind of brings the vocal out a little bit wider, and all of a sudden it captures your attention in a different way. So for me, it's a nice little unique touch I like to throw on all my vocals. I can go ahead and show you what I'm doing there. All it is just a basic doubler, just doubling that vocal, spreading it out left and right, adding a little EQ to bump up the high end a little bit right here at about 6.8K, and then adding a stereo imager here, just spreading it out, making it super wide. So this is a really cool effect I'll add just subtly to that lead vocal. This last plugin you see on my send here, this Vox key, this isn't really effect or anything. All this is doing is just sending a signal of my vocal here to my delay. So I have a little bit of quarter note delay on the dubs, which I'll get to here. And all this is doing is saying, when you hear any vocal coming in, duck down those delays so they don't get in the way of the lead vocal. This is another really cool trick you can use if you find that the delays you want them there the whole time to give you space, but they're just kind of getting in the way of that lead vocal. This is a great way to kind of just make sure it ducks them down whenever that vocal's there, and as soon as the vocal goes away, it brings the delays up.
Baby, you gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops.
So you can see it's just really compressing hard while that vocal's going in, but anytime there's a space,
Hey, don't worry, you ain't gonna leave.
as soon as it stops compressing, which then allows the delays to fall through. So that's a really cool trick to kind of control your delays a little bit. Alright, now that our lead vocals sounding pretty dope, let me show you my effects chains that I've been using on this particular song. So I have two reverbs that I'm using. I have a reverb 1, which is my main lead vocal reverb, and I have this reverb 2, which is the reverb I'm using on my ad-libs. I want those ad-libs to really sound pushed in the back and just real washy, so I have a different tone here. You can see I'm using the IR1 here for both of these reverbs. My reverb 1 here is set to a hall at a 2.7 second reverb time, and the second one is set to a plate at a 3.6 seconds, so a little bit longer. And like I said, this particular reverb 2 is a bit more washy sounding. Reverb 1 is just, well, you got to hear that on that lead vocal here, so.
Hey, don't worry, you ain't gonna leave me empty-handed. I'ma get you off no hands. The management of your thighs, round my neck, dirty tech, shoddy wet.
Alright, so I just like that particular sounding reverb on the lead vocals. I got a simple delay here. This is just a quarter note delay. Got a little bit of EQ, just kind of shaping it, making sure that I don't have too much high end there, too much low end. A little bit of compression just to make sure I can hear those delays better. And then, like I said, I have this compressor, which is my delay ducker, I call it, which just makes sure to duck the delays anytime that lead vocal's in with that vocal key bus that I showed you. A little bit of compression just to make sure I can hear those delays better. And then, like I said, I have this compressor, which is my delay ducker, I call it, which just makes sure to duck the delays anytime that lead vocal's in with that vocal key bus that I showed you. So now that I got the lead vocal sounding great and I got all the effects explained, let me bring in these dubs and these ad-libs and just complete this whole mix. Go ahead and unmute my dubs first. Basically what I do for my dub tracks or any sort of background vocals, I'll usually just copy the settings over from my lead vocal and then adjust from there. So I literally just, same exact chain that I had going on my lead vocals, brought right down here. Only difference is, instead of the 1176, I'm using the RVox. I just want a different compressor sound so that the dubs don't have the exact same tone as the lead, but I want them to sound pretty much the same, right? You don't want them to completely stick out, but I also want them to catch your attention when they come in. So I use a little bit different of a compressor here. I use a little bit of EQ on my VMR here. I'm adding just a little bit more presence, just so that when those side, left, and right dubs come in, there's just a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more high end on there. I'm using the silky setting, which is a really nice just sheen that it adds. And then I'm also adding a little bit more effects here on the CLA vocals. So you can see I took the top off here because I felt like I had enough from Virtual Mix Rack, the VMR. But I also added a little bit more reverb and a little bit of that quarter note delay, as well as the stereo spreader on the wide setting. So this is just giving my dubs a little bit different sound than the lead vocal. I'll let you hear how these dubs are sounding now that we copied all those settings over and brought it over. Let's also bring in our verb and our delays here.
Crazy, ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but the plug ain't gonna wait. Before I go home, might be late. Don't.
Right, so this is the harmony parts by themselves so you can hear what's going on.
I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but the plug ain't gonna wait. Before I go home, might be late.
So we got our harmony parts, we got our dub parts all in there. They're all sounding good. Let's bring in these ad-libs. The ad-libs are pretty much doing the exact same thing as all the other tracks. We got our auto-tune on here. I have it set a little bit harder, actually as hard as it can go, because I like that really, really auto-tuney sound on the ad-libs for Honey Boy's vocals here. And then I also add a little bit more of like a telephone kind of effect, so you can see I'm filtering all the way up to 3K and up to 350 Hertz, adding a little bit of top end here. This is just giving me a little bit of that kind of, like I said, that filtered telephone sound, which I really like on my ad-libs to kind of push them in the background.
I run my neck, so you give me them bands.
Alright, so you can hear that telephony kind of effect. Now another thing I like to do with my ad-libs is really spread them out in the stereo field. I mean, we have our lead vocal right up the middle, I have a little bit of spreading effects going on, and then I have my harmony effects that really bring it in left and right. So now I have this really wide image, but these ad-libs that kind of just sparkle in here and there, I really like the ad-libs to kind of dance from left to right throughout the stereo's field. So a really cool way to do that is with this plugin here, this auto pan plugin. It's really cool. I set it to my tempo and I set it for 2 bars, and this thing just will automatically bounce back and forth for me so that whenever I'm playing it, you can hear that vocal bouncing back and forth throughout the stereo field. It's a really cool effect.
Leave me empty-handed.
So it's just really cool. You can hear how that ad-lib is bouncing back and forth. Really cool effect. Here's my verb 2, which I showed you down there. I'm adding about -7, so you can see I'm really just washing this thing out with reverb. And then I'm adding my quarter note delay. So little delay, little reverb, and now we got our ad-lib sounding great. As I mentioned before, these are being pumped through the lead vocal track. So all they're doing is getting their auto-tune effect, getting their telephone effect, panning around left and right, and then they're getting sent right to our lead vocal chain, just so that they sound just like our lead vocals here. Alright, so now that we've made it this far, let's do a quick A-B just to see how far we've really come.
It was a thought. Goddamn, shawty looking for a man, but she never really had a man with a plan. Call me Stan, let me put a shirt and tie around my neck, so you give me them bands. Drop it in the coupe, roll me a bleezy, baby. I gotta drive, but it ain't no maybe. You gonna learn cause you make me crazy. Ain't got time for your complaints. I got some stops I gotta make. I know you hoping for the paint, but the plug ain't gonna wait. Before I go home, might be late. Don't worry, you ain't gonna leave me empty-handed. I'ma get you off no hands. The management of your thighs round my neck, dirty tech, shawty wet. I'ma take it to the next. When you shaking in the bed, when we riding in the coupe, shawty grabbing at the stick. Wanna drive, wanna lick, baby, all up on my yeah.
So that's it, guys. That's how I took this vocal from raw to that final mix that you just heard. Now, there's a lot of tips and tricks that I shared in this video. I'm hoping you picked up some useful information and have some really cool tricks to try on your next vocal mix. Smash that like button below and hit me with the comment with what you want to see next. If there's any other tutorials you'd like me to unveil, if there's any other tips in this video that I didn't really get enough in depth about, let me know. I'd be happy to make another video teaching you all of my secrets and tips for getting the best possible mix on your next record. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Sober, but shit, the whip was swerving. Must have been the way her tongue and her lips was working. But I ain't one to complain, I can't blame her.